Hi, I'm Tristan, and this is Thinking About Politics. So today, let's talk about Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss is an absolute legend when it comes to child literature. The man spent his entire life devoted to things like child literacy and creating books that would help kids learn to read. Guy was working from 1931 to 1981, but he still remains culturally relevant to this day. Who doesn't recognize the Cat in the Hat? What picky eater among us hasn't been forced to read Green Eggs and Ham as a child? And his stuff has been marketable. I mean, The Grinch Who Stole Christmas is now like next to Santa Claus in terms of like mascots for the holiday. It's like the holy grail of marketing. It's easy to forget that, especially for his time, Dr. Seuss had some pretty radical politics. He was a critic of quote-unquote America First policies, seeing it as a friend of fascism, if not outright fascist itself. He was also an advocate of racial equality and tolerance. Check out this one with American racial prejudice, giving the Pledge of Allegiance, while standing on a locked door, bunch of kids like reaching trying to get out. You give this video a pause and read this one. Oof. So if you're looking to teach your kids some like positive political values, like values of tolerance and equality and fairness, and you're looking to really inoculate them from the dangers of fascism or the lies of the next 2-bit demagogue, it's no surprise Dr. Seuss is a good place to turn. So I went ahead and put together these 5 stories you can read to your kids to teach them positive political values. All by Dr. Seuss. Yeah. Here we go. And a spoiler alert, by the way, for a bunch of children's stories that are like all more than 50 years old. Number 5. What was I scared of? Well, I was walking in the night, and I saw nothing scary, for I have never been afraid of anything, not very. This is the story of our little barbaloot-looking narrator here, who has nothing to fear in the world, until one day, he's confronted with someone who looks very different than him. It's a pair of pale green pants with nobody inside them, just standing in the air. And then they started moving, and it turns out like those pants are like alive or something. Spooky, right? It's spooky. So our narrator keeps bumping into these pants around town. He bumps into them while he's out to get spinach. He bumps into them while he's fishing. He bumps into them while he's picking a peck of snide. I don't know what that is either. But man, he is just freaked out by these pants that he keeps bumping into, and I've got to assume these pants live somewhere nearby now. So finally things come to a head where our narrator is confronted with the pants and realizes the pants are afraid of him, just like he's afraid of them. And in that moment where he sees the commonality between them, even though they look so different, our narrator's able to put his arm around the old pants to try to calm him down. And in fact, things worked out so well, they became friends. And now they see each other around town, and they say hi. What a great story. Look, when new people move into your community, especially people who look and act differently than you, yeah, you might be afraid. You might just kind of get afraid of that for some reason. But this story tells you that if you extend a hand and build bridges, you'll find out that you have more in common than you think. And what's more, you're really not afraid of anything. You find out that you're probably afraid of each other, and needlessly. It's a great lesson for kids to take in, and a good one for adults to remind themselves of. Number 4. The Zacks. One day, making tracks in the prairie of Prax, came a north-going Zacks and a south-going Zacks. So here we got the Zacks. 2 strikingly similar characters. There's only one big difference. One always goes north, one always goes south. And somehow, it just happens that they bump into each other. Wouldn't you know? Alright, yeah, it's a little contrived. Give the man a break. He's trying to make a point. You see, they bump into each other, and they can't figure out how to get around one another. And that is the obvious answer, right? Just kind of scooch around one another, or work together to like, one go under and one can go over, you know? But no. They sit there and stick dogmatically to these rules that they learned all the way back in school. That don't seem to have any real reason to be followed, except that they are the rules. One always learned to go north, one always learned to go south, and both of them learned to never budge. So, they can't get by one another, and rather than work together, they proceed to just verbally berate one another in this desert. It's great. And as they engage in this ludicrous shouting match, I think Dr. Seuss is trying to tell us something about the Cold War from his perspective. Or any, like, intractable argument between 2 parties that are unwilling to budge side to side. You see, Seuss kind of telling us that these 2 sides, they're very similar, but they're also the opposite. Cold War, like the Zach's arguments here, is an intractable one. The only solution is to beat one another up or to compromise somehow. And these acts just stand there forever, and the world passes them by and develops around them. He's also telling us something about ideological arguments in general, and how to be non-dogmatic, how to look for practical solutions, and how to compromise with people. Kids reading the Zacks are bound to learn what happens when you're stubborn, belligerent, and unwilling to accommodate your fellow Zacks. Number 3, the Lorax. Everyone knew this was going to be on the list, right? At the far end of town, where the grickle grass grows and the wind smells slow and sour when it blows, and no birds ever sing excepting old crows, is the street of the lifted Lorax. So, there was a movie made of the Lorax that began with like a fun, happy song in a beautiful town. This story begins in like a post-apocalyptic environmental disaster area, and it is great. Because the Lorax is a story about how consumerist greed can lead to the destruction of the entire world. How one man's quest to just create a new consumer product, the thneed, can result in the ruination of a lot. And what's a thneed, you ask? Well, a thneed defines something that all people need. And as the Onceler, the maker of the thneed, says himself, you never can tell what some people will buy. This is the cost of intensive resource extraction. This is the cost of indiscriminate pollution and environmental degradation. And it's making the argument that the pursuit of consumer goods is just not worth it. Getting the thneed is not worth what we have to give up to get it. This economic activity, although it was great while it lasted, resulted in a wasteland. And also, Seuss straight up trolls economic libertarians, where the Onceler demands his property rights at the expense of all of our rights to a clean and healthy environment. This one has been a classic for a long time, and there's a reason. Anyone looking to instill the values of environmentalism or to inoculate your kid from the allures of consumerism, this one's for you. Number 2, the Snitches. Now, the star-bellied Snitches had bellies with stars, but the plain-bellied Snitches had none upon theirs, and thus gives rise to the essential conflict in this earnest, if a little bit clumsy, allegory of racism and classism and bigotry of all kinds. You know, the star-bellied Snitches think they're the best Snitch on the beaches. They are just snobs, and they are jerks about it. The plain bellies just seem to want to be included, but don't seem to have much of a culture of their own. But still, Seuss does a good job at showing how unfair it is that the star-bellied Snitches won't invite the plain-bellied Snitches to their marshmallow toasts just because they ain't got stars on their bellies. It seems silly. Such a thing shouldn't matter. But if that's all there was to this story, if it didn't go any deeper than that, I don't think it'd be on this list. Might not be number 2, though. Here's why this one gets number 2. Meet Sylvester McMonkey McBean, one of my favorite antagonists in all of literature. Sylvester McMonkey McBean is a con man. He comes to the plain-bellied Snitches, says, hey, I can do whatever you need. I can solve all your problems. He calls himself the Fix-It-Up Chappie. Like, I'm the guy who fixes up your problems. So he shows up and he builds this wondrous machine, and he tells the plain-bellies, hey, you want stars like a star-bellied Snitch? All it's going to cost you is $3 each. And for $3 a pop, the Snitches all get stars on their bellies. And now all the Snitches have stars on their bellies. So that's great, right? Except now the ones who had stars in the beginning still think that they're better than the other ones, but they can't tell the difference. So McBean tells them, hey, I can reverse the process. I can put you in the stars off machine. And he sends them through the stars off machine and says, it's just going to cost you $10 a pop. The ones who don't now have stars go, hey, wait a minute. We don't want stars if it's not cool anymore. And McBean goes to them and says, hey, don't worry. Give me some more money. I'll take you on the stars off machine. It just keeps going. And it goes and goes and goes. Now, this process doesn't stop. It just keeps going. And when every last cent of their money was spent, the Fix-It-Up Chappie packed up and he went. And he laughed as he drove his car up the beach. They never will learn. No. You can't teach a Snitch. That is just, wow. For a children's story, that is just such a striking series of messages, right? I mean, sure, there's this allegory about racism and bigotry, but there's also this commentary on consumerism and how somebody will always come and try to profit off your bigotry and off the class systems that develop. How exploitative the whole thing is. Now, here's the thing. Snitches would have been number 1 on the list if it ended with that as the page. There's one more page after that that says, and then the Snitches just kind of became friends for no reason. I think that kind of undercuts the stark message of the Snitches. And what can I say? Maybe I'm a glutton for pain. This story is a powerful statement about how there's always somebody looking to profit off your prejudices and your desire for status. And this story shows kids just how silly those twin evils are. Number 1. Yertle the Turtle. On the faraway island of Salamascond, Yertle the Turtle is king of the pond. So here you got a turtle named Yertle, who's king of a whole pond. And things are looking pretty good for the turtles of this little Salamascond pond. Plenty to eat, the water's fine, but, you know, Yertle's got a problem. See, this world follows something like, Lion King logic.
Everything the light touches is our kingdom.
Everything Yertle sees, he is the king of. But Yertle starts to think that he doesn't really see enough. But if he had a higher throne, he'd see more, and thus would be king more. This is solid turtle logic. So he stacks up a couple turtles and stands on all their backs and can see even farther and says, "This is awesome." And this process continues until you can imagine the turtles all the way at the bottom start complaining. And so he keeps building his stack, and turtles keep complaining. So you have this turtle named Mac, who's all the way at the bottom of the pile. And at first he tells Yertle, "Hey, my knees hurt. I've got back pains. Can I get out of the stack?" And Yertle yells no. He just piles more turtles on top of him. Eventually Mac gets so fed up. Listen to what this son of a gun actually says to the king. "Your Majesty, please. We don't like to complain. But down here below we are feeling great pain. I know up on top you're seeing great sights. But down at the bottom we too should have rights. We turtles can't stand it. Our shells will all crack. Besides, we need food. We're starving," groaned Mac. The response from Yertle is to yell at him. He is the world's highest turtle. That guy named Mac's got no right to speak to Yertle. Nobody is higher than him. But then he sees the moon. And just as he was about to raise his hand and yell for more turtles to stack them all the way up to the moon, Mac burped. His burp shook the throne, sending Yertle tumbling from the top to the bottom. The turtles of the island of Salamascond had an anti-monarchy revolution. Awesome. And things work out all right. The story ends with the beautiful refrain, "And today the great Yertle, that marvelous he, is king of the mud. That is all he can see." And the turtles, of course, all the turtles are free. As turtles, and maybe all creatures should be. When I'm having a bad day, I come back and read Yertle the Turtle. It makes me feel good. You know, in Dr. Seuss we see this like basic decency. This idea that everyone should have rights. That everybody matters. That unkindness should not be rewarded. And that common, regular people have something really worthwhile. So, that's it. That's my list. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Did I miss some? Are there some other Dr. Seuss books or other authors who have some great political messaging in their stuff? And if you made it this far, you might as well give us a like. Go ahead, give us a subscribe. We've been hanging out at 99 subscribes for a long time now. We're really waiting for somebody to step up and be a hero here. Be our number 100. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. You've been great. Hope to see you again, but until next time,
I ain't got
keep
time
thinking.
to kiss you now. I'm busy with this mule.